What happens when a man who doesn't believe in anything finds something that shouldn't exist 3 meters beneath the ground? A miracle of the Virgin Mary that no one can explain to this day. But before we continue, leave a comment saying where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I would love to see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary are reaching. You know that type of man who wakes up before the sun rises, drinks black coffee without sugar, and leaves the house without saying a word? The one who works 10, 12 hours a day, comes back home, heats up whatever in the microwave, and falls asleep in front of the television turned on. Kevin Carter was that man, 40 years old. 18 of them sitting in an excavator, digging trenches and moving earth on construction sites in Houston. Kevin's hands carried calluses like battle scars, destroyed back. And the apartment, well, calling that a home would be generous. You know those houses that remind you of hotel rooms? Everything organized enough to function, but completely lifeless. Without a photo on the wall, without a plant about to die, without even a forgotten plate in the sink that would betray human presence. That was Kevin's world. Kevin had been divorced for 4 years. His ex-wife, Lauren, had left after years of trying to reach a man who seemed increasingly distant. "You're here, but you're not here," she said in their last argument. "It's like hugging a wall." He didn't argue. He didn't beg her to stay. He just nodded and watched her pack her bags. But there was one thing that Kevin hid from everyone. One thing that was slowly destroying his life more than the divorce, more than the loneliness, more than anything else. The pain. Have you ever felt a pain that doesn't go away? I'm not talking about a headache or muscle pain after a heavy day. I'm talking about a pain that wakes up with you, works with you, eats with you, sleeps with you. A pain that becomes so present that you forget what it was like to live without it. Kevin had a herniated disc. L4, L5, the doctor said. Severe. Very severe. The last specialist he consulted was direct. "Mr. Carter, surgery is an option, but I need to be honest. Given the location and severity of the injury, there's a real risk of complications. We're talking about possible loss of movement in your legs, partial or total paralysis." Kevin remained silent for a long moment. "What if I don't have the surgery? The pain will continue. It will probably get worse. You'll need increasingly stronger medication. In a few years, you might not be able to work anymore." It was a choice between 2 sentences. Risk becoming paralyzed, or accept a life of chronic pain until he couldn't move anyway. Kevin chose the pain. His co-workers noticed, of course, but nobody said anything. Kevin wasn't the type of man who accepted help. He wasn't the type who showed weakness. "I'm fine," he'd say when someone asked. "Just slept badly." Always the same answer. Always the same lie. It was on a Tuesday in September that everything started to change. The construction site was a new commercial complex in the Houston suburbs. A big project, months of work. Kevin had been operating the excavator since 7 in the morning. The work was routine. Dirt, rocks, more dirt. The excavator's bucket bit into the ground and spat tons of material into the truck beside it. Kevin did this on autopilot, his mind elsewhere, while his body executed the movements he'd known for almost 2 decades. It was around 10 in the morning when it happened. The excavator locked up. It wasn't the sound of an engine failing. It wasn't overheating. The machine simply stopped. Kevin frowned. He tried again. The bucket lowered, and the machine locked up again. He climbed down from the cab, walked to the excavation area, and looked down. At first glance, there was nothing special. Just dark earth and some rocks. But when Kevin crouched down to look more closely, he saw something different. A surface too smooth to be natural stone, too light to be a root or debris. What was it? It was Martinez, the construction engineer, approaching with his hard hat in hand and an expression of impatience. "There's something down here," Kevin said. "The machine won't go through." Martinez looked at the hole and sighed. "It's probably rock or concrete from some old construction." It happens. It doesn't look like rock. Then dig it out by hand and find out what it is. We can't delay the schedule. Kevin grabbed a shovel and started digging around the obstruction. 2 other workers came to help. With each shovelful, more of that strange surface appeared. It wasn't rock, it wasn't concrete. It was white, smooth, with shapes that looked sculpted. "My God," one of the workers murmured. Kevin kept digging, now more carefully. And gradually the form began to reveal itself. First a face, serene with closed eyes. Then a veil, hands clasped in prayer, a mantle that descended in delicate folds. It was a statue of the Virgin Mary, almost 6 feet tall, old by the looks of it, but intact, perfectly intact, as if it had been buried there yesterday and not decades, perhaps centuries ago. Kevin stepped back, not understanding what he was feeling. It wasn't fear, it wasn't surprise, it was something different. The details were impressive. The folds of the mantle looked real, as if the fabric could move at any moment. The hands clasped in prayer had delicate fingers, perfect nails, and the face had an expression of such profound peace that Kevin felt the urge to look away. Have you ever seen something so beautiful that it hurt? It's a strange feeling, isn't it? Beauty shouldn't cause pain, but sometimes it does. Sometimes you see something so pure, so perfect, that it makes you realize how broken you yourself are. Kevin didn't think about that at the time, he just felt it. The other workers stepped back, some making the sign of the cross. One of them, an older man named Roberto, removed his cap and bowed his head in reverence. "This is a sign," Roberto murmured. Kevin said nothing. He didn't believe in signs. Martinez approached, his face a mixture of surprise and irritation. "What is that?" "A statue," Kevin said, still looking at the serene face of the image, "of the Virgin Mary." "I can see it's a statue. The question is, what do we do with it?" Kevin didn't answer. He was too busy observing the piece. There was something about it that caught his attention. It wasn't just the fact that it was buried 3 meters deep in ground that should be nothing but dirt and stone. It was something else, something he couldn't explain. "Get that thing out of there," Martinez said. "Throw it somewhere. We need to keep working." "Throw it away? What do you want to do? Call a museum? This is a construction site, Carter, not an archaeological dig. It's probably some old piece that someone buried 50 years ago. It's not worth anything." Kevin looked at the statue again. But what if it was? Kevin wasn't religious. He didn't go to church, didn't pray, didn't believe in anything beyond what he could see and touch. But he knew there were collectors who paid fortunes for religious antiquities. And that statue looked old, very old. "I'll take it," he said. Martinez shrugged. "Do whatever you want. Just get it off my construction site." With the help of 2 co-workers, Kevin lifted the statue from the ground. It was heavy, but not as much as it seemed. They carried it to his pickup truck and placed it carefully in the bed. Throughout the entire process, Kevin felt something strange. A sensation he couldn't identify, as if he were being watched. Nonsense, he told himself. It's just a statue. That day, Kevin got home later than usual. With effort, he dragged the statue from the pickup truck into the garage. He placed it leaning against the wall, between the tools and old boxes. What was he going to do with it? The original plan was to research its value and sell it to some collector. But now, looking at that serene face under the dim light of the garage, Kevin felt a strange hesitation. Tomorrow, he thought. Tomorrow I'll figure this out. That night, Kevin slept poorly. The pain in his back was worse than normal, and he woke up several times. At 3 a.m, he gave up on sleeping. He went to the kitchen, took medication with a glass of water, and sat in the dark. He thought about the statue. For some reason, he couldn't get her out of his head. "You're going crazy," he told himself. "It's just a statue." But when dawn broke and Kevin went to the garage, the first thing he did was look at her again. The morning light came through the dirty window, and illuminated the statue in a different way. Kevin could see the details now, the delicate folds of the cloak, the expression of absolute serenity, the hands that looked so real it made you want to touch them. He approached, extended his hand, touched the surface of the statue. It was cold. Normal. It was just stone. But for a second, just a second, Kevin felt something, a tingling at his fingertips, a sensation of warmth that rose up his arm. "Nonsense," he repeated. "Your mind is playing tricks on you." He went to work. The days that followed were normal, or at least they seemed normal. Kevin went to the construction site, operated the excavator, returned home. The statue remained in the garage, in the same corner where he had left it, accumulating dust along with the tools. He still hadn't researched the value. He still hadn't called any antique dealer or collector. There was always an excuse. He was tired. He would do it tomorrow. He wasn't in the right headspace for it. The truth is that something was stopping him, a resistance he couldn't explain. It was on the 5th day that Kevin noticed something strange. The pain was different. It hadn't disappeared. It was still there, pulsing at the base of his spine like always, but it seemed smaller, less intense, as if someone had turned the volume knob down a few degrees. Kevin frowned. He tried to remember if he had done anything different, taken any new medicine, slept in a different position. Nothing. Must be my imagination, he thought. A good day. Everyone has good days. But the next day was also good, and the next, and the next. In the second week, Kevin noticed something else. He was moving differently. He wasn't walking hunched over anymore. He wasn't leaning on things to get up anymore. His body had remembered how to move. 3 weeks later, Kevin scheduled an appointment with the doctor. He didn't want to do this. He didn't like doctors, didn't like exams, didn't like sitting in waiting rooms reading old magazines. But he needed to understand what was happening. The pain had continued to diminish. It hadn't disappeared completely, but it was at a level Kevin hadn't experienced in years. He could work a full day and still have energy when he got home. This wasn't normal. This didn't make sense. The doctor was the same one who had given the original diagnosis, Dr. Mitchell. A 60-year-old man with thick framed glasses and a permanent expression of concern. "Mr. Carter," he said when Kevin explained the situation, "herniated discs don't improve on their own, not like this. I need to run new tests." Kevin took the tests, MRI. Everything the doctor asked for. A week later, he was back at the office. Dr. Mitchell was sitting behind his desk with an expression Kevin had never seen before. "Mr. Carter, I need to be honest. I don't understand what I'm seeing here." Kevin felt something tighten in his chest. "What is it?" Dr. Mitchell pulled up the images on the computer. "This here is your MRI from 6 months ago," he pointed. "You can clearly see the herniation, L4, L5, as I had diagnosed. Severe." Kevin nodded. He remembered that image. Remembered how he had stared at it trying to understand how something so small could cause so much pain. "And this," Dr. Mitchell continued, "is your MRI from yesterday." He put another image on the screen. Kevin looked, and looked again, and didn't understand. "Where's the herniation?" Dr. Mitchell shook his head. "That's exactly what I'm trying to understand. It's still there. But look, compare the two images." "This doesn't make sense," Dr. Mitchell said. "Herniated discs don't regress this way." Kevin remained silent for a long moment. "So I don't need surgery?" Dr. Mitchell hesitated. "From what I'm seeing now, no." Kevin left the office in a state of shock. This was impossible. Things like this didn't happen. Not in real life, not to him, but it was happening. A week later, Kevin walked into the garage to get a screwdriver. It was a Saturday morning. He was going to fix a faucet that had been dripping for months. That's when he felt it. The smell of roses. Kevin stopped in the middle of the garage. He looked around. The statue was in the same place as always. But the smell, it was impossible. The garage always reeked of motor oil, grease, dust, old gasoline. There wasn't a single flower inside. There was nothing that could explain that aroma, but it was there, strong, real, unmistakable, fresh roses, as if someone had just placed a huge bouquet right in front of him. Kevin felt his heart race. He walked toward the statue, following the smell. The closer he got, the stronger it became. And then he felt something else. Heat. A warmth that enveloped Kevin like a blanket, like an embrace. And then he saw, on the other side of the garage, a woman. Kevin blinked. The woman was still there. It wasn't a shadow. It wasn't his tired mind playing tricks. It was real. She wore a blue mantle that seemed made of sky, a white tunic that glowed softly even without any source of light. Her hands extended in a gesture of welcome. But it was the face that made Kevin stop breathing, a beauty that made you remember everything that was pure and good in the world. Sunday mornings in childhood, your mother's smile, the smell of cake baking, all the simple and perfect things you forgot existed, and the eyes, looking directly at him, full of a compassion so deep that Kevin felt as if she could see every wound, every pain, every moment of despair in his life. Every time he lied, every time he closed himself off, every time he chose solitude because it was easier than risking being hurt. She saw everything, and yet there was no judgment in those eyes, only love. A love so great that Kevin didn't know could exist. A love that asked nothing in return, that didn't demand that he be better or stronger or more worthy, that simply accepted him, exactly as he was. Kevin wanted to say something, but he couldn't. The words died in his throat. And then, without knowing why, he remembered. His mother, gone 12 years now. She had been deeply devoted to the Virgin Mary and prayed the rosary every night. For Kevin, thinking about it was still too heavy. He buried everything, the memories, the objects, the prayers. Not because he didn't love his mother, but because he felt that faith, so sincere, hadn't been able to save her from the illness. After she was gone, he simply closed his heart. Now, 12 years later, Kevin felt something break inside him, and he fell to his knees. The tears came. 12 years of tears, for the mother he had never properly cried for the marriage he let die, for the life he had wasted locked inside himself. He cried like he hadn't cried since he was a child, without shame, without trying to stop. And the whole time he felt that gaze upon him, that love that asked for nothing in return. When he finally managed to lift his head, the woman was no longer there, but the scent of roses remained. That same weekend, Kevin began working on the backyard. He didn't have much, a patch of land behind the house that had been abandoned for years, overgrown with weeds and debris. But it was enough. First, he cleared everything, pulled out the weeds, removed the trash, prepared the soil. Then he built a concrete base, simple but solid, a dignified place. He carried the statue from the garage to the backyard and placed it on the base. But Kevin wasn't finished. The next day, he went to a plant nursery. He didn't understand anything about gardening. He had never planted anything in his life. But he knew exactly what he wanted. Roses. He bought white and red rose bushes. He bought enriched soil, fertilizer, gardening tools. When he finished, he stood looking at what he had created. The statue of the Virgin Mary surrounded by roses. It was simple, but it was beautiful. For the first time in years, Kevin felt something he had forgotten existed. Peace. The months that followed brought changes that Kevin never would have imagined. The pain continued to diminish. It didn't disappear completely. There were still bad days, but those days were becoming increasingly rare. But physical healing wasn't the only change in Kevin's life. He began to talk more with the neighbors, people who had lived next to him for years and whom he had never even greeted. He started saying good morning, accepting invitations to barbecues, offering help when he saw someone in need. One night, Kevin did something he hadn't done in years. He called Lauren, not to try to win her back, not to ask her to return, just to apologize. "I know I wasn't a good husband," he said. "I know you tried and I didn't let you. I just wanted you to know that I understand now, and that I'm sorry." Lauren didn't come back. The marriage had been over for far too long to be fixed. But the conversation ended well, without resentment, without anger, with something that felt like peace. And that was enough. Sometimes, sitting in the backyard, looking at the statue surrounded by roses, Kevin would talk to her. Not formal prayers, just conversation about the day, about work, about the mother he missed. And sometimes, just sometimes, when the wind blew in just the right way and the roses swayed gently, Kevin could swear he felt that gaze again, that love that asked for nothing in return. A year after finding the statue, Kevin was at a new construction site, another big project. He was operating the excavator when the machine stalled. Kevin smiled. He got down from the cabin and went to check. But as he walked to the spot where the excavator had stopped, he thought about how his life had changed since that Tuesday in September. He had found a statue. He had wanted to sell it for money, and it had given him something that no amount of money in the world could buy. Healing, peace, faith. The faith of knowing that there are things that cannot be explained, mysteries that don't need to be solved. Grace that doesn't need to be earned. Kevin looked at the hole in the earth. It was just a rock, a normal rock, but he smiled anyway, because now he knew. Sometimes things stop for a reason, and sometimes what you find 3 meters below the ground is exactly what you need most. Before finishing, I want to invite you to become part of our prayer community for the Virgin Mary, a space of faith and hope where people from all over the world unite to pray and share graces received. If you feel in your heart the desire to be part of this prayer chain, click below and become a channel member today and come pray with us. And look, if you made it this far, all the way to the end of Kevin's story, do one thing for me. Write in the comments, "Roses," the perfume that changed everything. I want to see how many hearts this story truly reached. And every time I read that word in the comments, I'll know that one more person believes that miracles from the Virgin Mary still happen. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Write in the comments about some miracle that you have already witnessed or experienced, and share this video with someone who needs to renew their hope today.